Hey there, combat sports fans. Susan Cingari back here again for part 4 of my interview with BKFC Matchmaker, the one and only Nate Shook. How are you today, Nate?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure and an honor because you work harder than anybody I know. So I really do respect the fact that you're giving me all this time for all these interviews. So thank you again.
Absolutely.
A little bit of history, background on you. You were a boxing coach, right?
I was. So I had the opportunity while I was in North Carolina. I met some mixed martial arts fighters who wanted to learn boxing, and I was an assistant coach to a guy named Mark down there. We ended up opening our own gym. I ended up then merging with a larger gym and promoting boxing and mixed martial arts fights. But yeah, so I've been a boxing coach since 2003.
There's an interesting story about how you met your wife through boxing. We have to share that because I think it's amazing.
Yeah, so I was a boxing coach in Pennsylvania, and I was also a matchmaker at the time with David's mixed martial arts company. And Katie was looking to compete, but she couldn't find anyone to fight her. At 5'9", and she was competing at, I believe, 135, 145 pounds. Everyone she sparred with, she wasn't going to fight. And then the people she didn't spar with that saw her sparring really didn't want to fight her. So I had the opportunity for her to fight on the card. She took the fight. The girl she fought was 6'2" or so. Wow. And the fight was supposed to be at, I believe, 147 pounds. And the female came in pushing almost 170. So the fight ended up happening. It wasn't on our card. It was on another promoter's card. The fight ended up still happening, and Katie did really well. But we kept in contact, and then years later, we got married. So
and the rest is history, as they say. All right, I want our fight fans to know that Katie Shook is also a huge part of the BKFC family. So, Nate, tell us what Katie does, because she never sleeps either. I know that for a fact.
Yeah, Katie does a ton behind the scenes, from booking airfare and hotels, negotiating those deals for us, rental vehicles. She coordinates the pickup from the airport with the shuttle driver, schedules interviews and podcasts for Sean Wheelock to interview the fighters, and for the Toe the Line and BKFC fighters to get on podcasts. Week of the event, she deals with the fighters and the hotels and whatnot. And she also helps me with a lot of the contracts, because it's we sit down and we have to get the data into our spreadsheets and whatnot. So while we're doing contracts, we're building the database. So she's a huge part. I'm glad she's involved. I'm glad David brought her on the team. And I'm glad she loves the sport as much as I do.
We're all glad to have both of you on the team. Speaking of David Feldman, tell us a little bit more about how you became acquainted with him.
So we were both fight promoters. In 2006, September, I matchmaked a card in Virginia for his brother, actually. And I met David that way. 2 years later, or 3 years later, I moved back to Pennsylvania. I started doing my own shows. David was a large boxing and MMA promoter in the state. We both had our eye on a casino, but instead of us fighting over it, he allowed me to go in there, and he mentored me through the process. So PA Cage Combat did the first 7 mixed martial arts events at the Sands Event Center in Bethlehem, PA. As we moved forward, our companies ended up merging, and I ended up becoming his matchmaker, and XFE led the way then for combat sports in the Lehigh Valley.
I read that you were not the matchmaker for the very first card in Wyoming, but you must have known you had something special after that fight.
Yes. Actually, when Bare Knuckle started, the first show, I helped bring fighters to the tryouts, and I was the backstage manager, getting the fighters from the backstage, like I do now, out to the ring in a timely fashion. But a different individual was the actual licensed matchmaker for the event. After the first event, Dave and I sat down, we spoke, and he offered me the opportunity to match the second card. The fights were very entertaining and very well matched. But from there, we knew how we had to match going forward and the type of fighter we were looking for going forward to keep the fights entertaining. So from the second fight on, I've been the matchmaker on record.
What do you think is the toughest part of your job, Nate?
Filtering through the hundreds of applications and trying to find the fighters that have it, because there are times that we get applications from fighters who are undefeated, but just because they're undefeated in a different combat sport doesn't mean they're made for bare knuckle, because it takes a different type of fighter. And a lot of times what we find is some of these fighters that don't have the best of records in other sports are made for bare knuckle. And even if they don't win in bare knuckle, it doesn't mean we're not going to have them back, because there are fighters out there that are insanely entertaining that people want to see, that have fought multiple times and they don't have a winning bare knuckle record, but they always show up to fight. They always show up weight, and they do everything that's asked of them.
Do you have a favorite fighter of all time?
I would have to say Rich Franklin. And the reason being is, and this is obviously not taking anything away from him because he's my favorite fighter, but he represents the average American, I believe. Mm-hmm. He was a well-educated individual who I don't believe had any great gifts in combat sports, but he worked hard, and he showed that if you set your mind to something, you can succeed. And he went from being a math teacher to a world champion. And I don't think he had anything that stood out about him. I think it was just hard work and dedication that showed that set your mind to it, don't give up on goals, and you too can be successful. And I think people today too many times want things given to him or given to them, and he shows that you have to work for it, but you can do it.
Agreed. He's a great role model and a great fighter. Final question. If you could make any match between any fighter, living or dead, who would it be and why?
That's a tough one. Okay. So obviously these conversations go through people's heads all the time. I would say if I had to pick two fighters, it would be Jack Johnson versus Rocky Marciano. So Jack Johnson, I believe his record was 73-13 with 10 draws. A legend in the sport. But he also had knockout power. He was 6'1", 200 pounds with 40 knockouts. He just had a presence. People loved to watch him, and he was a heavyweight champ. Rocky Marciano, 49-0, 43 knockouts, 5'10", 5'10.5". When he won his first title, he was 184 pounds. So I think these two icons of boxing are similar in weight, being 15 pounds apart, similar in size, both with a ton of experience, a ton of knockouts. I think that match would be one that people would love to see, especially in bare knuckle.
Spoken like a true matchmaker. I love it. And we'd love to see that fight if that could happen. So, Nate, people want to fight bare knuckle. Tell our fans where they can jump into the squared circle. What's the best way to reach you?
Best way to get a hold of me is Instagram, BKFC_matchmaker. The best way for fighters to have an opportunity to fight in BKFC or Toe the Line Fight Series would be to attend a BKFC tryout. We have a ton of applications coming in, but when people fill out these applications, it's good because I get to filter through them, but it doesn't paint the whole story. So come on out, show us what you have, do the interviews, show us you want to be there, and then hopefully you'll get a chance on Toe the Line Fight Series, or if you're one of the few that really stick out, David gives 2 contracts at least at all the tryouts for BKFC.
Where can fans watch the Toe the Line series and all the BKFC fights?
Thank you for bringing that up. It's bktvapp.com. You can go on there and see the bare knuckle streaming service, or you could download the Bare Knuckle TV app, and it's Bare Knuckle TV. Thank you very much for having me again, and just like to thank our sponsors, two of our main ones, Tiger Life Energy Drink, thank you so much, and Fusion CBD Products. Thank you again for supporting BKFC and Toe the Line Fight Series.
Thank you so much, Nate Shook. I really enjoyed all these interviews, and I look forward to seeing you in the squared circle soon.